Hi, I'm Rob Wilson, electronics engineer. I spent a lot of my career working on RFID and NFC technology, which you'll most likely know from contactless cards, like that one. I've got an idea for a project which involves you in applying the technology to the care sector of our world. I have in mind hospitals, but of course you can think of a wider context if you want. I spent many years designing microchips, but I didn't really get closely involved with their end uses. But some of the end uses I did see were things like door locks in hotels, transport tickets. I got quite heavily involved with that, mass transits like the London Underground, and of course financial transactions are hugely important for this business. Some years ago I heard that one of the biggest costs for private health in America was legal expenses when things go wrong, and they do. So anything that can help was of a big financial interest. But of course from a society point of view we also don't want things to go wrong in hospitals and so on. So your challenge will be to explore the uses of RFID in the care sector. Just a little bit about me first. I was inspired to choose electronics as a career by an early interest in the 1960s in radio. It was valve radio very much in those days, although transistors were just beginning to become available for youngsters. My cousin Bruce was a big influence with that. I became a microchip designer in the 70s, developing early microprocessor systems for telephones. I got into RFID in the 90s when it was just becoming to the fore. The inspiration, or a lot of work, had been done by the government for tagging prisoners. I stayed involved with RFID until I retired 6 years ago, and I got a few patents on the way. Now we're going to see a short clip about the technology in RFID and NFC. An RFID tag is a read-write memory. The memory is not volatile, so if the power goes away, the memory still remains intact. And it doesn't need a battery, it gets all of its power from the magnetic wave. That magnetic wave comes from the reader. The reader in this slide shows a little printed circuit board, but nowadays you can get a reader built into a phone. We'll see that later. So here's an example. I've got a reader in my phone and I've got a contactless credit card. You can see in the picture on the right that the card has read some data from the phone. You can see my last transaction there. We mentioned magnetic fields. If you have a loop of wire near an RFID tag and reader, you can actually see the waveforms if you're careful. The big waveforms are coming from the reader, and the small ones are the ones coming back from the tag. Here's what a real tag looks like. It's got an antenna on the printed circuit. Right in the corner, right at the top, is a very small microcircuit or chip. Here's a close-up of that chip. It's actually one I designed. You can see it's minute in proportion to the antenna. Here's what the chips look like in practice. Here's a photograph of 4 of them. Each one measures about 0.6 of a millimeter on the side. At the time it was made, it was one of the smallest in the world. Now, NFC was the next sort of evolution from RFID. What it does, it combines the reader and the tag functions in a single unit, like a phone. And a lot of modern phones certainly have got NFC capabilities. What can you do with it? Well, one example is Google's app called Android Beam. I'm not sure it's that useful, but the idea is that you can easily swap data from one phone to another just by touching them together. Other uses, well, the big use for RFID and NFC is in payment, contactless payments using your phone. Another huge use, especially in countries like China and India, is for transport tickets. Here's an example using a Wi-Fi connection example. In my camera on the right, I've got NFC, my phone's got NFC, and I can use the NFC to start picture copying over Wi-Fi, so I don't have to know too much about the Wi-Fi. If you want to experiment with NFC, there's a number of apps available: NFC Tools, NFC Reader, Tag Info, and NFC Tasks. We'll have a look at a bit more detail on these. With the NXP Tag Info app, you can read data. This particular tag I was reading is made by Broadcom Corporation. I used to work for them, and the IC is called a Jewel. You can read the data in the tag. It's not encrypted in this particular one because it was intended just for transport data, not for financial transactions. Another app is NFC Tools, and here you can do an awful lot of things. We can read the data, we can write to the tag, and actually we can also do tasks. Now, this is really where things come into its power. I've programmed this tag that when my phone reads it, it'll open my Costa loyalty card. Okay, that's a bit trivial, but it's the sort of thing you can do. Here's a slightly more interesting thing. You can define a task like making a phone call, and if the tag is read by a reader and phone, say, it'll make a phone call. I hope that was useful and inspirational. What could you do? Well, here are some pointers. First of all, find out about the care problems and accidents involving identification. For instance, in a hospital, what can go wrong? And how could RFID solve those problems? Another thing, look at the apps for reading tags and programming them, and essentially look at the sort of tasks you can do with an RFID reader. The sort of thing I'm thinking of is, if this happens, then do that. You can get tags cheaply. Have a look on eBay. If you're buying a few of them, less than £1, and it's quite easy to experiment with them. So please do have fun, and we hope to see you in the CREST project.